it's Starr, and today we'll be talking about phosphine. So what exactly is phosphine? Phosphine is three hydrogens attached to a phosphorus molecule, which gives the formula pH3. The molecular weight is 34 grams per mole. It is a colorless gas with a garlic or sometimes fishy odor. It's slightly soluble in water, and it readily degrades into environmentally favorable molecules. It is used in the pest control, semiconductor, and plastic industries. For the semiconductor industries, it is used to isolate phosphorus from silicon crystals. It is also flammable when O2 is introduced to it, corrosive, and toxic. So how is this exactly created? A little phosphine history is that in 1783, Felipe Gingenberg produced phosphorus gas by heating white phosphorus with potassium carbonate in an aqueous solution. In 1789, Lavoisier noticed it was a combination of phosphorus and hydrogen and called it phosphor dehydrogenate, which means phosphate of hydrogen. In 1844, Paul Thenard separated diphosphide from calcium phosphide by using a coal trap. And in 1857, phosphine started to be used in organophosphorus compounds, and in 1865, it finally got the name phosphine. In the 1930s, it started to get used as a grain fumigant, and today it is a well-known suicide route in Asia and Europe by ingesting phosphine pellets. So the lethal doses for this molecule is for long-term exposure, it's 3 parts per million. To cause serious problems after several hours, it's 5 to 10 parts per million. Half an hour of exposure is 400 to 600 parts per million, and inhaling a few breaths is 1,000 parts per million. The symptoms of this disease are if it comes into contact with your skin, it can cause frostbite. Some mild to moderate symptoms, which may or may not occur in everyone, is severe lung irritation, burning chest pain, decrease in blood volume by the heart, headache, restlessness, irritability, dizziness, lethargy, drowsiness, fatigue, double vision, gastrointestinal distress, liver damage, sweating, loss of feeling, impaired walk, trembling of extremities, staring movement, cyanosis, which is discoloration of the skin, a cough sometimes with fluorescent green symptoms, dyspnea, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. The severe symptoms, which occur in most people, are pulmonary edema, tachycardia, collapse of blood vessels, also known as peripheral vascular collapse, which causes your blood pressure to drop, ventricular dysrhythmias, cardiac arrest, shock, seizures, coma, and in everyone, eventually there is tonic convulsions which will occur, which will cause death. In a postmortem individual, what you will see when you open them up is inflamed mitral and aortic valves, myocardial necrosis, and fragmented fibers. This is the phosphine pathway, and this will be explained on the next slide. Phosphine enters the body in two different ways, either by ingestion or inhalation. If it's ingested, the material will go through the digestive tract until it hits the stomach. This is where it will combine with HCl and break down into phosphine or any other molecules that are in the material. If it's inhaled, the material will go to the lungs where it will combine with water, and this will break it down into phosphine and whatever else is in the material. When phosphine hits the system, it will alter the mitochondrial formation, causing the inhibition in cytochrome C oxidase, which creates hydroxyl radicals. This in turn will cause lipid peroxidation to occur and will have proteins become denatured. Now, if it's been ingested, it will go through eoesophageal injury, which causes gastrointestinal ulcers and hemorrhages to appear, and it will also lead to renal and hepatic failure. And if it's inhaled, it will lead to diffuse alveolar damage, which will have acute respiratory distress syndrome, alveolar edema, and hemorrhages appear. And it will be followed by ischemic stroke and tracheoesophageal fistula. In order to understand why this is used as a fumigant and why it is used in the fumigation industry, we must understand some about the history of fumigation. So in 2500 BC, ancient Sumerians had used sulfur to kill insects, but in 2500 to 300 BC, Egyptians and the Chinese started to use herbs and oils. And in 300 BC, the Chinese discovered phenology, which is the study between climate and biological phenomena, and they also started to use the predators of the pest. In 1101 AD, China discovered soap as a pesticide. In the 1600s, nicotine, herbs, and arsenic started to get used. And in 1800s, the San Jose scale and Colorado potato beetle were introduced into environments, which 1860s, due to the pandemic of the Colorado potato beetle, Paris green, which is a mixture of arsenic and copper sulfate, was used to get rid of them. And in the 1930s, moth group compounds started to become synthesized. And then after World War II, chlorinated hydrocarbons DDT and organophosphates started to get used in the industry. And in 1962, Silent Spring, made by Rachel Carson, was written, and it showed that DDT had adverse effects on individuals. So DDT ended up getting banned. So now methyl bromide and phosphine are being used. However, methyl bromide is being phased out and phosphine is being used. So why is phosphine being used instead of methyl bromide? Well, it is very cheap compared to methyl bromide. It has a simple application method. It doesn't really affect the grain quality all that much. It is super effective and it leaves little residual amounts. In order to fumigate grains, they have to put it into the silos. So what they do is they open a container, as seen on the right hand side. They open a container, pour some pellets or gas into a container and dump it into the silo. And they must wear protective equipment for this due to the fact that it is corrosive and it can cause skin damage and eye damage. So an example of phosphine gone wrong is in 2017 in Amarillo, Texas. A father had acquired weevil-side from an unknown source who had believed that this man had a true license to do pest control. However, he had acquired this license from the black market, so he did not take any courses necessary to obtain this license, and so he didn't know exactly what he was doing. So he ended up getting this weevil-side, going to his home, and not reading the label, which said, "Do not use 100 feet from animals, humans, or livestock." And he had used it underneath his home. And he realized that there was excess, so what he decided to do was take a water hose from his own home and he sprayed the bottom of his house where all the excess was. And overnight, the reactions which were being caused by the water which he had sprayed had started seeping phosphine into the home. The next morning, people started to get worried about this family and called authorities to make sure that they were okay. By the time authorities had got there, there was already one kid unconscious and unresponsive, who later was going to be pronounced dead, and there was also 7 other kids, and the 2 parents were also sick. They ended up all getting rushed to the hospital. However, before they could all get saved, 3 other children had died from this father applying the weevil-side underneath his. So why should we Georgians care? Because that was in Texas. That doesn't have any effect on us. So why should we care about phosphine? Well, a plant in Sylvester, Georgia called birdsong peanuts, a warehouse of theirs had gone up in flames, and it was called Warehouse 3. Well, this was occurred by phosphine getting wet after it was being applied in the warehouse, which the operator did not exactly make sure everything was shut like it was supposed to be. So there was an air vent, and it was raining that day, and the water had come into the air vent and started dripping into this warehouse. Well, eventually the phosphine had got enough oxygen to ignite. And due to the peanuts being highly flammable as well, the peanuts also went up, which caused a major leak fire that night. And so that morning, they had sent a bunch of firefighters over there, and they had gotten the fire out. However, due to the fact that the peanuts were still smoldering, they were taking the peanuts out by forklifts into a field, and they were letting them smolder for about a week. And that's when they started to stop smoldering. Which was good in this event was that no one was injured. Thankfully, however, this can happen again, and it can have very much worse problems other than what this plant had. And that's it.